And now I'd like to take a moment to do a land acknowledgement. OCIC acknowledges that the land on which we gather and work is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, and the Métis, and the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation. Today, the meeting place of Toronto, from the Haudenosaunee word Toronto, is still home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work here. As we reflect on our role within the settler colonial context, we acknowledge the importance of naming the Indigenous communities on whose land we live, work, and play. And we also recognize and underscore the importance of framing our involvement and engagement in the sector and beyond through the lens of reconciliation, recognizing that through our location and operations on unceded land across Turtle Island, we have a responsibility to stand in solidarity with the Indigenous communities who have and continue to fight for social justice on their lands. As such, both as part of OCIC's anti-oppression policy and as a holistic approach to our organization's work, we recognize and encourage our network to recognize and reflect on the role each of us play in reconciliation. Through our land acknowledgement, we orient ourselves within this context to do better and to intentionally engage in each and every space in a way that will allow us to take back lessons, tools, and knowledge to better support and stand in solidarity with Indigenous peoples. Land acknowledgements should go beyond simply naming the lands on which we are located. They should push us to recognize that there is no neutral engagement in our work, rather setting the intention to do better and work towards reconciliation and anti-colonialism in each and every moment. And I would just invite you to take a quick moment, if you know the land on which you are gathering, to please add it in the chat and the names of the original caretakers of the land. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Warm welcome to everybody. Thank you so much for taking time to be with us here this morning and to learn from the panelists' insights and expertise towards decolonizing knowledge and strengthening academic CSO partnerships through community-based approaches. Welcome back if you were here yesterday with us for our AGM or the day before for the opening session with ARC. We are glad that you've been able to join us one more time. And if this is the first session you're joining us, welcome. Very unfortunately, one of the key contributors and the intended moderator of this panel, Leslie Chan, is unable to join us today, and he sends his very sincere regrets. We greatly regret his absence and send him some positive thoughts. And as a result, I will be doing my best to moderate this panel today. This is the third of 5 sessions of OCIC's AGM Symposium, centering reconciliation and decolonization in the international cooperation sector this week. And we will focus on the importance and the meanings of decolonizing knowledge, drawing upon perspectives, experiences, and current research and policy collaborations from 4 amazing panelists that are working to strengthen educational approaches, academic CSO partnerships and collaboration, and community-based and informed research. Just a acronym alert from my side, so CSO, civil society organizations. So all of the bios are available on our website and in the participant package on page 28 and 29. But nevertheless, I'd like to briefly introduce our panelists. So perhaps you can raise your hand as we do that. I know the spotlight is on me, but maybe it's not on all of your screens. And feel free to not put it on me. So Andréane Martel is director of the Spur Change program for the Intercouncil Network of Provincial and Regional Councils for International Cooperation in Canada, which is also called the ICN. Prior to joining the ICN, Andréane was leader of Next Generation Collaboration for Development program, which was a joint initiative between Cooperation Canada and the Canadian Association for the Study of International Development, or CASID, which aimed to foster better collaboration between practitioners and academics in our sector. She recently co-edited a special issue for the Canadian Journal of Development Studies on CSO academic collaborations in the Canadian global development sector. Next is Judy Annette Muchiri, whose work sits at the intersection of gender equality, civic participation, and digital advocacy, and has experience doing advocacy work with nonprofits in African countries, researching and writing on these areas. Her most recent research focuses on safe spaces for young women's civic participation in Kenya And currently she's completing a PhD in sociology, co-leading the African Community Engagement Hub and leading policy and research work with the ICN. Dr. Vida Shehada is a professor and coordinator of the International Development Postgraduate Program at Centennial College, one of our OCIC members. She develops and teaches courses on different issues of international development, including gender equality, human rights, poverty, and monitoring and evaluation. In addition to her teaching portfolio, she provides academic leadership in the development and coordination of the program courses and is responsible for the internal and external liaison, as well as team leadership and facilitation. So a tremendously large role. Lucky for us, Dr. Shehada or Vida is also an OCIC board director. And last panelist is Karen Villanueva Paez, a Colombian community worker, graduate of International Development Studies at York University, and Master in Social Work student at University of Toronto. Karen supervises programming at Toronto's Centre of Learning and Development, where she integrates her passion for popular education, activism, and visual arts to support immigrant and newcomer populations living in underserved communities. So I actually have the personal pleasure of working with each of these women. They are exceptional and they're great collaborators and partners. And I look very forward to hearing what you have to say, as I'm sure that we all do. So I'd like to begin by hearing a little more about each of you. This might help us better understand the context of your work and your personal connection to this overall theme today, which is decolonizing knowledge. Why does this matter to you? So each of you have up to 5 minutes where you can tell us a bit about you, and we'll go alphabetically for this first round, beginning with Andrea.
Bonjour à tous et à toutes. Thanks, Kim. Thanks, OCIC, for having me on this panel. I'm pleased to join the session from the traditional territory of the Kenyan Keaka, also known as Montreal. I'm happy to start this panel with the personal connection, because as Kim knows, this is a very important topic for me. I would even say that this has become over the year part of my core agenda. So empowering through knowledge partnership is something that I carry over throughout mandates, organization. Even when it's not part of my formal mandate, I try to keep this in my mind and keep always on the side how to better partner with researchers, how to have empowering protocols when we do these sort of research collaboration. So Kim mentioned that I was previously at Corporation Canada, and my role was specifically to foster these sorts of collaboration among Corporation Canada membership and Canadian academics in the global development sector. So we were working with academics involved with the Canadian Association for the Study of International Development. So I spent 3 years searching, testing, piloting, learning on how to better work together with the goal of improving the sector knowledge ecosystem through meaningful and equitable collaboration. So trying to better understand what makes these sort of collaboration more equitable and more meaningful for all the participants involved. But we also wanted to offer insight on how to move towards more evidence-based programming, evidence-based policy, but also more research action. So how do we empower the whole of all the communities and partners involved in knowledge ecosystem and knowledge protection in Canada in this sector? So at the time, we were observing this Canadian knowledge ecosystem that we call it, and we could see that it was underperforming when we're comparing it to other countries. For example, there were very few incentives to do cross-sectoral collaboration, few grants dedicated to this, and few incentives, especially for young academics, pre-teen or academic, to do these sort of extra work, extra collaborative work. There were also few funding that will make it sustainable for CSOs to participate fully and meaningfully in this sort of collaboration. And maybe a last point that was also a characteristic of this underperformance was the lack of, or the very few common space where communities and academics could meet and share. We're thinking about think tank, for example, the fact that there's very few think tank in Canada dedicated to the sector since the closure of the North-South Institute think tank. So even if you could see a number of partnerships happening, there were some structural or systemic deficiencies maybe. So this is what this initiative was all about. So if I go back, I see that I still have about a little bit more than 1 minute. So if I come back to that personal connection, when I was doing research on this topic, I came across this concept of bridging expert. So these bridging experts, they are defined as people who have experience on the ground in the field of global development, but also with some experience and reputation in research. This was coming from Elena Chernikova's work back in 2011. So I thought that we probably need more of these bridging experts in the Canadian development field. We need to train some of these bridging experts. And I was trying to become this part of these bridging experts for the sector to help both organizations and academics navigate throughout the complexity of these cross-sectoral collaboration, but also to advocate for them. So hopefully this is what we will do during this panel today. So maybe just to close up this little intro. So during this session today, I will speak about some of the learning and best practice that we've learned throughout these years of testing different collaboration and trying to see how we could empower those involved or they could empower themselves by being part of this process. And also concretely how I apply this now in my current work with the Spirit Change and with this partnership that we are having with researchers at the Guelph University on this. It's a specific study on the impact of COVID on civil society organizations in Canada. So I will explain a little bit more how we set up a protocol that is engaging and participatory for all the partners involved.
Amazing, Andrea. And you know what? I love that term, bridging experts. And I personally will say, I think you are the bridging expert. What strikes me as well for us in the sector is the value of the continuity and institutional knowledge that people like you are bringing forward and maintaining these relationships and the knowledge over time. So as we discussed, your research was just finally launched right now, even though it's been over 4 years of a project. So thank you so much for bringing this to us today. Judy Annette, if you'd like to go next.
Thanks, Kim, and thank you so much for having me on the panel. Hello to everyone who's joined us today. My name is Judy Annette, and I'm joining in today from the traditional homelands of the Beothuk here in St. John's, and I'm happy to talk about something I care so deeply about, and so I'm really glad that I was invited. So personally, decolonizing knowledge is something I care deeply for, and this is evident in my professional work, in my community activism, which I've done, as you've heard from the bio that Kim has shared. And also in my academic work, and so trying to live up to some of the commitments that center other knowledges, and trying to not extract these knowledges and lived experiences of communities. And so so for today, we'll be talking about ICN's research project that we just began, and I will be talking about some of the things that we're looking at. So for this research project, we're looking at how the sector can adopt more anti-racist, more feminist and decolonial approaches in public engagement. And we're trying to look at how that looks like in practice. And so we've gathered CSOs, feminist activists, youth leaders to examine some of the key questions in this regard. And so throughout today's discussion, I will be sharing some of the approaches that we're taking with this work. I will also be sharing some of the key insights that we've already had. We've had a couple roundtables so far that I will talk about, and I will share some of that. But also coming back to my approach to this decolonizing knowledge work, I look at it as an ongoing project. And so that's how I'm approaching this work and today's discussion. And so focusing more on what we're doing as we go, rather than trying to achieve a state of decolonization. And so I'm glad to engage with the rest of the panel. I think I think that's it, Kim, from me.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Judy Annette. And I mean, this is an amazing intro and reflection on how much this work is a lifetime approach for many of us. And in fact, it comes from everywhere. It comes from our lived experience. It comes from our work approach, from our personal approach, from our academic approach. So it's wonderful to have you join, Judy Annette, and we're so glad that you're working for the ICN on this project as well, in addition to your own research. So next, I would like to invite Vida.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, my name is Vida. I'm a professor in Centennial College, and I'm board member of OCIC. The reason why I'm here, well, basically, education, like it's very known that education has historically been a key part or an instrument to strengthen colonization, and on the other side, weaken and eradicating indigenous knowledge. So as an educator, I can relate to that very well. And also international development, the field of international development is also criticized to have colonial structures and to stimulate whose knowledge and whose capacity and whose approach can define the process of international development. So I believe this is how I relate to this topic. Also, as a person who came from a developing country myself, and I was raised, and part of my education was under colonized system of education to some extent. So all of these issues together, I believe, are the reason why I'm speaking about this topic today. And I personally believe, as an educator, I have a responsibility to decolonize our approach in education, the content, the curriculum of our education. And as other speakers said, it's a long process. It's not something that it's a policy that you decided and implemented. So maybe it were to discuss what are the different approaches, possible approaches. And when we say it's a long track, so what does this track entail in the classroom and in the education culture? So I believe, like, all of these things together are related to whether what we are doing in the field in international development, or what do we teach our students are related. And I see education as a good, maybe as much as it is the best tool for colonization, it's, decolonization has to be in the heart of education, whether at the pedagogy level or at the curriculum level. And I believe we will discuss these things more. So yeah, this is why I'm here today, and this is who I am.
Thanks so much, Vida. And I'm so glad you're here. I think you really touched on the systemic nature of colonization, how deep it is, how much effort it will take to learn about it, really understand the insidious nature of it, learn how to be activists against it, and to unlearn the process. So can't wait to hear more about what you have to say. Finally, Karen, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hola, buenos días. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me in this panel. Well, I think for me, my personal connection or my individual connection really comes from lived experience of oppression. And as an immigrant to Canada, with my family coming in as refugees, it really felt firsthand experience of what does it mean to live in a colonized environment, right? And how to navigate those feelings, emotions, and where do I belong, right? So for a lot of us that have a different background, it's like, how do I fit into all of these spaces? And while I'm seeing how my family is being affected or my life is being affected, I'm also part of the system somehow. So how do I navigate that, right? So I think for me, it really started being grounded in lived experience and going through it and watching my family struggle. But at the same time, it quickly moved into from the individual perspective to the community and then to the organizational. So I see it as 3 impact levels, really: individual, community, organizational. And so in terms of the community, I would say that's when I really started getting inspired by a lot of the social movements that were happening across the world, where a lot of young people, a lot of, oppressed folks would come out on the streets, advocate, protest, really shake up the system, and bring about change. And I know that there's many different ways of doing that, but that personally is what inspired my work. Those type of social movements, especially from the South, as it was mentioned in my bio, I'm originally Colombian. And so then moving into the work that I do at the organizational level, and really looking into, again, what is the history of nonprofit organizations? How do they fit into the system? How are they part of capitalism? How are they contributing to perpetuating oppression? And so also understanding how to navigate that part of the work. And then how am I bringing myself in? I personally find it very hard to compartmentalize. And so for me, it's like, how am I bringing my genuine self into all these 3 impact levels? And so I think that for me is really my connection to decolonizing spaces, and especially knowledge.
Thanks so much, Karen. My instinct tells me that many people will resonate with what you're sharing. And having this lived experience, having this experience at the community level, and reflecting on what it means in our organizations and in our sector and in society at large right now. I think there's such a larger awakening and more dialogue spaces for this. And it's so important that you're so transparent and willing to talk. So thank you so much. We have a lot of very big issues here. And I really thank all of the panelists for bringing it to the table. I'm going to also